What's going on, everyone? Here's a video about Steam kind of being on fire in December compared to last December and before. They just had a record-breaking month. We got an interesting video here about a gentleman, Water CS2, covering it. So let's get into it and let's see what he has to say. Let me know what you guys think. This is pretty good. We obviously want healthy video game markets, and Steam is definitely one of them, along with PlayStation and Nintendo, to pick up the slack for what's going on with Xbox.
Steam just did something that most people thought was impossible. While the rest of the tech world is talking about a cool down in consumer spending, Valve just reported its most successful month in the history of the platform. In December 2025 alone, Steam generated a massive $1.6 billion in gross revenue.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And they had a deep sale discount too. They also have really good deals on Steam. Damn, bug is up in here. And I like some of their deals. You know, sometimes I'll get games on Steam. Sometimes I'll get it on the Pro, just depending on, because it's exclusive stuff, obviously. Or they got some good deal on PlayStation Plus or Essential. I'm like, okay, I'll go in this month just to make good use of the value, like Silent Hill 2 right now, Alan Wake 2, and what was the other game I'm playing? Oh, Harry Potter, I grabbed that, and that saved me like $80 to $90 for like one fee of like, under 15 a little bit. And then I go look at Steam and I see good sales on there. I'm like, okay, so I got to set up a schedule here. I got a time limit over there, but I don't have a time limit on Steam because I don't have to pay for online. And it is nice juggling back and forth between the two. And then I'll get on my Switch when I need to play exclusives on there. So yeah, outside of the console world, though, Steam is definitely holding up the video game industry when it comes to revenue in a certain degree, like just helping out. Because, there's a tank that happened this year, definitely with Microsoft falling off, and they're picking it up, and you got the Steam machine coming out. But man, is it being hammered by this other crap that is just hurting gaming in general. So yeah, this is pretty good. 1.6 billion seeing that.
Put that number into perspective, that is a 22.7% increase over December 2024. But to understand why this is a power move, we have to look at the ladder Valve climbed to get here. Back in 2020, at the height of the global lockdowns, Steam hit what everyone thought was a permanent ceiling of $1.4 billion. Analysts said we wouldn't see those numbers again for over a decade, and for a while they were right. But then the momentum shifted. December 2024 climbed to $1.3 billion, and now Valve hasn't just edged past their pandemic record, they broke it by $200 million.
Yeah, and Arc Raiders was the peak to help them do that. It is blowing up and it is still going. You saw that Battlefield actually had almost an 80% drop compared to launch. They'll probably get some back with some updates, but Arc Raiders is not dropping. And it's doing very well with Steam. And one thing I like about Arc Raiders is that it's $39.99. You know, so some of the biggest games like Expedition 2 hitting $49.99, they did very good. And it's not about 70. It's about a really good video game and letting a lot of people in. Who cares? If you sell 10 million copies at $39.99, you made 400 million. If you sold 2 million at 70, you made 140. Who wins? And who has a way bigger base, right? Yeah, that's why sales are good. Because you can still get people in there, and if you even have microtransactions, you can make even more money. That's why I understand how dumb Microsoft is, because it's like you could have had a million consoles sold in the holidays if you would have had amazing deals with Game Pass. Then people could have went and got Game Pass more after that, got microtransactions on your console, and bought video games, at least a little bit, because you know how their market is. But even then, still, you have more people in your ecosystem to buy other things rather than looking at hardware as to be a profit, which is not intelligent if you're not Nintendo.
We're witnessing the Steam platform evolve from a dominant storefront into an untouchable ecosystem. In fact, by the time the clock struck midnight on December 31st, Steam's total revenue for 2025 hit an estimated $17.7 billion. Before we zoom in on Steam, we have to look at the bigger picture. The global games market in 2025 was a monster. According to Newzoo, the industry reached $197 billion in total revenue. That is a 7.5% year-over-year growth. While mobile and consoles are doing well in their respective space, the real story of 2025 is the PC market. PC gaming generated $43 billion just this year, growing at a rate of 10.4%.
Yeah, microtransactions helps out a lot with that. Now, if we were doing specifically just sales only and no microtransactions, totally different world. That's one thing I hate. I wish gaming, and this is not no downplay to anything. I wish gaming would be succeeding more from people actually buying really good video games rather than overspending on microtransactions, because it's not, to me, a true measure of success when you have the gaming industry addicted to being gamblers online and just overfeeding gotcha mechanics and free to play mechanics. I would rather see that, which is why I like the Nintendo platform and the way Nintendo sets it up, because it's mostly about, I actually sold this many copies and made that, but there's this many people actually buying my development. Not overspending on microtransactions and saying that I made more than you because somebody bought more MTX. I mean, I don't like it. And I know a lot of people feel the same way. And this has nothing to do with Steam or anything else. Obviously, everybody benefits from it, but you guys know what I mean. I've had videos about this before when I'm like, I really wish that 50% free-to-play gacha focus, you know what I mean? Because you have to include gacha in there, but just free-to-play focus like the stuff on mobile, it's all microtransactions. It's not because the game is actually amazing. That's the problem. Some of those games are actually good though, but you guys know what I'm talking about. And then you got amazing games that just don't get the sales that they deserve because people are addicted to these service games and they're overspending on cosmetics when they should be using it to support really good video games.
As we discussed in our last video, the revenue isn't just flowing to these standard $70 AAA games. In fact, many of this year's biggest safe sequels were met with mixed reviews and bad reception. Just look at the Platinum tier for 2025. While Battlefield 6 and Monster Hunter Wilds made the list, they are sharing the stage with indie breakouts like Schedule 1 and Silksong, proving that the marketing machine of a giant publisher is no longer a requirement for success.
Yes, that's another example. Silksong selling what it sold. It sold the most on Switch and Steam. But guess what? That's just straight up buying a game that had an amazing price point that people were like, man, I would have paid 30 for this, no problem. But guess what? You're fully supporting the game fully. You're not going in there to buy microtransactions, and that is really good. Same thing with Expedition 33. You know what I mean? Donkey Kong Bonanza. Like games that are selling that are actually really good video games. You're actually buying a whole video game and you can get everything in there. They're not trying to pinch you after you get into the game monthly and stuff like that, or daily. You know what I mean? So that's what I mean, because to me, a real good video game is you being able to develop things. And if you wanted people to pay for a sub, it's because everybody's on an even sub like they had in the World of Warcraft days and Final Fantasy 11 or 14 days, where everybody's on an even playing field, and I'm going to keep on subbing because you're giving me content that is so good. So that means that you're going to focus on giving me better content, or focus on giving me a game with everything I can earn out of that's actually really good, rather than I'm going to keep a lot of my development focus on cosmetics and vanity rather than giving you rich content. Yeah, that's annoying.
Making a game that people want to play is. The most telling stat is that Call of Duty Black Ops 7 didn't even make the top 10 on PC revenue.
Good, it was trash.
Black Ops 7 saw an 82% drop in sales compared to last year's entry.
No, we Call of Duty Slop Ops 7, you mean AI slop. It's what it is. Yeah, I mean, that series is so overrated now. Everything is beating it now. Battlefield destroyed it. Arc Raiders destroyed it. I mean, they're going to need to put some Call of Duty games on Nintendo Switch too. Watch, it's coming. Because it's so repetitive now. I'm tired of seeing the same dog, S-H-I-T, over and over again every year. You do the same thing. And if it's going to be ready within a year, with the guys, they're making the game in like 6-7 months. It's like a sports factory. Yeah, it's a zombie cycle. And they keep coming around because people keep supporting it. It's the same thing.
Players are clearly looking for something different. They are rejecting the $70 yearly roster update model and gravitating towards games that offer genuine innovation, whether that's a AA hit like Arc Raiders or an indie masterpiece that costs half the price. At the end of the day, Steam is the one who benefits of this trend, especially as it's the home for indie titles. While other platforms are struggling with hardware shortages or declining subscription numbers, Steam is just growing.
Yeah, Steam is doing well, but you know, indie, you got to say Nintendo and Steam, because Nintendo's been supporting indie for a long time. They pretty much are the heart and soul and foundation of where that started, all the way back in the 90s. So nothing against what he's saying too, though. I like what Steam is doing, because people complain so much about indies and other games. Sometimes they call it a shovelware hell back then. But that's what I said. When you think about like who's doing like so well, it's Nintendo and Steam and PlayStation also, because they made more revenue than all other PlayStation consoles already, and they said that like a year plus ago. So but when you talk about not dropping off in improvements, yeah, Steam also just set a new record recently. I think they were close to 42 million, if I'm not mistaken. I was reading an article on that.
January 4th, 2026, the
Yeah.
platform hit a new all-time peak of 41.8 million concurrent users. To give you an
Congratulations.
idea of how fast that's moving, the pre-pandemic peak was only 19 million. Valve has more than doubled its active user base in just a few years. But now let's talk about that $1.6 billion from December. According to Alinea Analytics, Steam has already cleared $16.2 billion in revenue by mid-November. But by the time the winter...
But you saw what it says, right? Free to play and premium. That's what I mean by like, that's cool, but it's not cool because I hate the free to play model. It has ruined a lot in gaming. And that's what I mean by their success compared to Nintendo's. Nintendo is superior by a mile on all platforms because most of their success is coming from actual hardware and software sales. Not free to play. I could just freely download it and everybody spends a bunch of money on those games and I just sit there and take it like a pirate. I'm just saying, like, there's a difference here because they're not developing first-party games. I'm sorry, I have to interject on that because that is to me. I'm not talking to you, Water, specifically, but there's a lot of fanboy nonsense around there where I'm like, it's not the same. Like, not even close. And anybody should agree with me, even if you don't like Nintendo or not. This is a neutrally speaking that I would rather see Steam make that with actual video game sales rather than free-to-play and microtransactions. I hate that crap.
Sale ended, Valve had finished 2025 as its best year ever. But where did that $1.6 billion come from in December? It wasn't just the big AAA hits. It was a combination of live service giants and strategic holiday discounting. The standout performer of the holiday season was undoubtedly Arc Raiders. In the final 2 weeks of the year, it sold 1.2 million copies on Steam alone. Across all platforms, Arc Raiders has now crossed the 12 million unit mark, with 7 million of those sales coming from Steam. What's fascinating about Arc Raiders is how it maintained that momentum. While Battlefield 6 saw a massive launch, its player retention began to decrease. Arc Raiders actually grew its daily active users throughout the sale, hitting a record 3.2 million players on January 4th. However, even with those massive numbers, Arc Raiders only ranked second in total revenue. The top spot still belongs to Counter-Strike 2. This highlights Valve's secret sauce. They own Steam and they own the most profitable games on the platform, which generates them $1 billion in case and skin sales. This leads to one of the most insane statistics in the tech world. Valve currently operates with roughly...
At least it is their identity, but that's what I mean. Like, identity is always at the top. Like, when you think about what should be representing your platform, like Mario represents Nintendo, you know what I mean? And Pokemon and Zelda and all those games, it was like your identity is strong. You look at Steam, they're always playing older games, and then at the top it's like of Dota, you know what I mean? Counter-Strike, wait till Half-Life launches, right? And watch there be like Orange Box 2 or something, or like Team Fortress, whatever the next one is with that. They can make a Blue Point. They can make all sorts of stuff off of just that launch and have a whole bunch of systems running for quite some time. And that will boost their exclusive identity big time, which you want. I'm telling you, it makes things interesting. Just like when you look at PlayStation, you know, there's identities over there. Ghost of Yotei was one of their identities last year, along with Death Stranding, though that's temporary. When you think about Uncharted, when you think about games that they had before, their identity is obviously a little bit less, but they still have their exclusive identity that sometimes never leaves there. Like, for example, look at Gran Turismo. It's like 16 million sales. I can't believe that game is still selling. They never went anywhere else. And they have a whole bunch of exclusives coming this year. Wolverine's going to be there for a while before it hits it anywhere else. You know what I'm saying? Soros is coming. They have a lot of good games that consistently come there, and also Money Hats, which I'm not going to brag about because there's not really nothing to brag about. But Sony starts up some of those people and help them, though. But you want the identity. People think about identity when they think about the PlayStation logo and the hardware and things like that. You think about identity with Steam when you think about that logo not being Windows database, obviously, which is good. Nintendo, we know their identity. Xbox used to have an identity. And when we look at identity elsewhere, it's like when you look at the top of the market across the whole world, who's number one? NVIDIA. That's identity. Right? DLSS, all that stuff. NVIDIA. Back in the days, Apple. That's identity. Apple only, right? Microsoft, Windows only, right? Google, YouTube. All these are identities. Like, if you don't have an identity, it hurts you big time. There has to be a reason. Steam has an identity too for like deep discounts, starting up the digital sales trend even back then. And look how that blossomed across all platforms. And people run some of that stuff. And then some of the identity tactics they learned from Nintendo. that Gabe Newell talked about a lot of times. So this is the stuff that I mean, like when you talk about Steam, that's an identity. And it's very important to make sure your identity is strong and you don't sell it out and stay private as long as you can.
336 employees. Based on their estimated 2025 earnings of $4 billion in commissions and game sales, Valve is generating over $50 million in revenue per employee. For comparison, Apple generates about $2.4 million per employee, and Google generates about $1.9 million. While Microsoft and Sony spent 2025 laying off thousands of people to fix their costs, Valve is making more money than ever with a team smaller than many single AAA game studios. One of the most interesting parts of the December report is the volume sellers. These are games that might not make the most revenue for the year, but they bring a massive influx of new players into a developer's ecosystem. Now, it's important to remember Steam doesn't set these prices. While Valve runs Steam, the developers and publishers are the ones deciding the sales.
Did you guys know that?
2025, they were incredibly aggressive. Just look.
Did you see what he just said? Steam doesn't set those prices though. So like you got to think about how smart Gabe Newell is, along with all the other guys. Like they're kind of like, that's why I say hard teammate. If you get what I mean, like they set that system up, though they make good decisions though, and they're more for the gaming community rather than AI and profit. As we see them not doing that, and they're not using Windows either. That's a good thing about the Steam machine, but. That's why I say that they're very good at playing that game and making the right decisions, which actually benefit them vastly more than anything, because everything else, they're kind of just sitting there benefiting off of like their old legacies as well, too, that they've had still running for a while, like Counter-Strike and Dota and stuff like that. Because when Valve creates a game, them and Nintendo, they have a similar aspect to Nintendo in a lot of ways, where they have this evergreen manifestation where it's not going to be something that sits there for 1 month or 2 months and it tanks off. No, it's going to be there for years upon years, still flourishing.
Look at Detroit Become Human. It sold nearly 1 million copies, 993,000 to be exact, during the winter sale. This happened because the publisher chose to drop the price to $4, the steepest discount the game has ever seen on Steam. Then you have the team behind Icarus, who dropped their price from $35 all the way down to $3, moving 735,000 copies in a matter of days. It's a win-win. The players get an incredible deal, and the publishers gain a massive fresh audience just in time for their next big project. Steam simply provides the perfect stage for these developers to execute that growth with their large seasonal sales. The most prominent example of this is Slay the Spire. The developers dropped the price to just $2, selling nearly 600,000 copies in 2 weeks. They didn't just do this for a quick cash grab. They did it because Slay the Spire 2 is officially entering early access in March 2026. So by making the entry barrier for the first game lower than a cup of coffee, they are ensuring that 500,000 new fans are primed and ready to buy the sequel at full price the moment it drops. And the final piece of the puzzle is hardware. We cannot talk about Steam's growth without talking about the Steam Deck. 3 years after it launched, the Deck is still a powerhouse in the market. Although Valve recently discontinued the LCD model and are sticking to OLED only, global estimates put the sales between 4 million and 5.6 million units.
That's okay though. I mean, for Valve, they're okay with that because they don't really subsidize. But more than anything, they hit a new record high, and the revenue is very good. And we ain't no hater over here. We give credit where it's due. The only thing is, and I know a lot of people agree, if you are intelligent, I would like to see that more towards games and games on sale than microtransactions. But you know, everybody wants to make more money, so that's kind of how that works. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think. Once again, congratulations, Valve. I really hope you start thinking about Steam OS laptops and desktops and a Steam Machine Pro. That would be nice. Peace, y'all.